Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second annual virtual town hall for Pathways. Before I introduce our first speaker, I want to let our town hall audience know you can submit questions via the submission box under the streaming video player. Please put your questions for our speakers there. We'll have some time at the end of the event to answer community questions. Now, to get us started, I'm pleased to introduce the president of Pathways, Nate Lampkin.
Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm pleased that you could join us. It's hard to believe how fast time flies, and it was just about a year ago today that we were doing our first town hall, and we were speaking quite a bit about what we're going to talk about tonight, the Inpatient Care Center project. At that time, we had architectural renderings and our own imagination, but the construction had not started yet. But some of our marketing technical wizards and our architects partnered to put together a virtual tour video. So I think it probably would be great to start there. So let's take a few minutes and look at this short video.
Imagine a place that feels like home when you need hospital-level care. At Pathways, this is our vision for our new inpatient care center.
Most hospice care does happen in a patient's home, but there are times when a higher level of inpatient care is needed. We currently lease space at Mckee Medical Center. We have 6 beds there. But right now, the demand for those beds far exceeds that capacity. And at Pathways, we don't believe that the words hospice and wait list belong in the same sentence.
Let's take a look at how Pathways is meeting the growing need in our community, breaking ground on land we own east of our Fort Collins campus to build a 12-bed, standalone inpatient care center.
This will be a tranquil, beautiful space intentionally built with the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our patients and families at the heart of the design.
As you drive up, instead of another visit to the hospital, you see what looks like a mountain lodge. From the entrance and throughout the center, a sense of warmth and comfort surrounds you. Natural light flows in from skylights and ample windows. A beautiful, non-denominational chapel allows for quiet reflection, prayer, and even space for memorials, celebrations of life, and other services. And just across the hallway, a private room for families to meet with counselors.
The ability to provide counseling to patients and families during these really stressful times is important to us. It's a real gift to have a space like this where we can be right where the patient is and the family is as they receive hospice care.
There's a feeling of spaciousness throughout. The great room is another area for gathering or contemplation with a piano and other instruments available for musical performances. A large communal kitchen allows families to prepare their favorite meals. There are 2 lounges for families to relax and talk together. Plus, multiple meeting spaces provide families more privacy when needed. Now, let's head back to the rooms for our patients, where they can bring touches of home with them and enjoy the outdoors from the comfort of their bed. There's ample room for groups of visitors. The patient rooms are comfortable and enable the highest level and quality of care.
An inpatient care center will allow us to provide more intensive treatments, things like intravenous medications, and allow us to make changes rapidly, say within minutes, as opposed to hours in the home setting. We'll also have 2 patient rooms that are equipped with negative pressure ventilation. Basically, that means air is moving into the room rather than out into the hallway, and this will give us the ability to treat patients with COVID-19 or other highly infectious diseases. So having our own standalone hospice center will allow us to put in place safety guidelines and rules that make the most sense for hospice as opposed to a hospital setting. Families, patients in hospice have different needs than hospital patients, and that's why we're building this facility.
Pathway's new Inpatient Care Center is part of our commitment to ensuring compassionate, excellent, and comprehensive hospice care in northern Colorado.
Meeting the great and growing demand for inpatient hospice beds in northern Colorado is mission critical and our highest priority. We hope many people in the communities that we serve will join us in making that vision into reality.
Well, that's a wonderful video. I love to see it, but I do cringe every time I see Leave It to Me to schedule the video shoot at a time when I was experimenting with a shaved head. But let it grow back. It's really exciting to see the graphic depiction in the video, and then to think about the progress that's been made since then. We had a ceremonial groundbreaking on May 25th, where we invited employees, volunteers, board members, past and present, donors and community supporters to come and kind of kick off the construction phase of the project. And it was really quite humbling to listen to some of the remarks and talk with the people afterwards, including a number of folks who were involved with Pathways many years prior to my arrival in the spring of 2017. We really stood on the shoulders of giants to get this project across the finish line, and it had been hoped for and wished for and dreamed about and planned for many years. So it's exciting now to be able to walk outside the office door, take a right turn, and see the construction site. Excuse me. So the actual construction started about a month later in late June, and proceeded fairly quickly from that point, particularly once the foundation was laid and the framing started. And just a few weeks ago, on November 18th, we did a time-honored tradition called the stud signing, where the framing is up, the studs are up, but the drywall hasn't gone in yet. And we invited the same group of folks that we invited to the groundbreaking to come back and actually have an opportunity to walk through the framed space. And we gave them some big fat Pathways logo Sharpies, and they were able to sign their names and inscribe messages in the walls. And as we speak, or again tomorrow, the drywall will start to go up, and these names and these messages will be enshrined within this sacred space forever. Love that photo that you saw. That wonderful lady in the purple sweater is Mary Dellenbaugh, who has been a board member at Pathways for 20 years, a wonderful supporter. And if you ever come to the Pathways office on Carpenter Road on a Wednesday, she's there at the reception desk answering the phone and greeting people. So it was a real treat to walk through the building with her. Just to give you a little bit of an update on the schedule, we have a weekly project meeting, and if you have a piece of wood handy, knock on it. But at this point, we do appear to be on track, on schedule. The supply chain issues that have wreaked havoc with a lot of other projects have largely left us alone. So we are looking at substantial completion, meaning that Franz and Pittman, our GC, and the subs have finished the building and they hand us the keys, probably around April or May of next year. And then CDPHE and if you get a life safety inspection, there'll be some surveys that have to occur. And then the building will open hopefully in June or July of next year. We've been very fortunate, again, knock on that wood. Winter has not visited us early this year, and we should be pretty much fully enclosed by Christmas time, which will help us continue to progress through the winter. And last, on the construction side of things and the building itself, just the impact that this will have when it opens. The video, I think, did a great job of articulating that. Our 6-bed unit at Mckee Medical Center, really for the better part of the last 2 or 3 years, has often had 6 patients in it. I think in 2020, 1 of every 4 days, all 6 beds were full, and we had perhaps 2 or 3 patients teed up on a wait list. the population of northern Colorado, as we all know, continues to grow explosively, and there is great and growing demand. And we're just incredibly honored and privileged and blessed to be able to be that organization that steps in and meets that need and provides the community with these urgently needed beds. We'll open with 12. There is the ability in the future, which I expect will be not too distant, to add another 6-bed pod and bring that up to 18 beds total. And it's just really exciting as 2021 draws to a close and we look to 2022 to think that this wonderful building will actually open next year. So that's all on the care center construction side of things. Next slide, please. I'm just going to shift to the capital campaign. So the design and construction of a facility like this is not an inexpensive undertaking. Although the facility will be beautiful and home-like and will not in any way give off an institutional feel to it, the level of care that is provided is hospital grade. And we actually have to build this 15,000 square foot facility to hospital level code. So we have an $8 million capital campaign that is well underway. It certainly has been a challenging history with this campaign. We wrapped up the quiet phase late in 2019. And in mid-January of 2020, with great fanfare, we went public and announced this to the community and our staff and our volunteers and our donors. And we all know what happened about 6 or 8 weeks later when a once-in-a-century global pandemic crashed down on us and all of the economic fallout from that. So for a good portion of 2020, we kind of had to walk the campaign back a little bit. We've started to pick it up again late 2020 into 2021. Really got some great momentum going. As of this conversation, we're sitting at about $2.3 million towards that $8 million goal. And more gifts are continuing to come in. Colorado Gives Day is coming up next Tuesday, and there'll be opportunities throughout this presentation for you to see the link to where you can go there, support us for Colorado Gives Day, and those funds will go towards the capital campaign. This summer, we had our 20th annual Vintage Affair fundraiser. It's our signature fundraiser that is presented by our good friends and partners and supporters, Wilbur's Total Beverage. And that was our most successful AVA event ever. We raised about $115,000 towards the campaign. We are excited to make this Colorado Gives Day the most successful one in all the years we've been participating. And I get to see the gifts coming in, and I'm gratified to see that we're well on track. We really need your help. While we will certainly continue to raise money after the building opens, anyone who's familiar with capital building projects like this will tell you that your biggest opportunity to raise the funds is prior to the grand opening. So we have a number of major gift prospects out there that we're hoping will materialize soon, but we also really need the gifts of $50, $100, $1,000, $5,000, whatever folks can give. We really would appreciate your participation, and you will be supporting a facility that for generations to come will provide exquisite end-of-life care and support to literally thousands of patients and families. So excited to share that with you. Thank you for listening. It's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Pathways Medical Director, Dr. Michael Tobin. Dr. Tobin is board certified in family medicine and as a hospice medical director. He has more than a decade of expertise in hospice and palliative care, advanced directives, and pain management. And at Pathways, he oversees the team of healthcare professionals who ensure their patients facing serious illness get excellent care. And if I can go off book for a minute, if I or a member of my family were in need of hospice care, there's no physician that I would rather have at our side than my good friend Mike. So, Dr. Tobin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be here tonight with all of you. I'm trying to get into my middle of my camera here. Welcome to my office here late at night. Yeah, this is a really, really exciting time for us here at Pathways. This building that's going up next door is absolutely gorgeous. It is going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to serve the community, our patients, their families. And I've been here for 6.5 years, and one of my top priorities when I came was the hope of building a freestanding inpatient care center next door. So you can imagine how excited I've been that the board and everybody decided to take my idea and go ahead and build this building. Yeah, I probably can't take full credit for that, but I thought it was a good idea. It reminds me of a time back when I was young, probably 6 years old, and my uncle and aunt lived in Denver, not far from where my family lived at the time. And we'd go over to my aunt and uncle's house, and there was a vacant lot next door. And I would run over to the vacant lot with my butterfly net and catch butterflies in the summertime. And I just thought that was really cool. So I said to my parents one time, I think you should buy that vacant lot so I can catch butterflies anytime I want. And you know what? They bought that vacant lot, and I was so excited. But shortly thereafter, they dug a big hole and put a house on it. So not so many butterflies, but it was a beautiful house. It was great to grow up next to my aunt and uncle. So anyway, as many of you know, hospice is a service. It is an action. It is a concept. It really is not a place. Many of you are aware of the requirements to be on hospice. Somebody has to be expected to die in the next 6 months if their disease runs its expected course. And that care for that person in the end of their life or the end of this life can occur wherever they are. So hospice itself is not a place in and of itself. It is an action, a concept. With that said, there are several levels of hospice care, and I'm going to address that next to illustrate why it's so important that we have an inpatient care center and a really nice inpatient care center, because spending that intense time in a comfortable and loving environment is really important. Next slide, please. Hospice, our goals are always comfort, dignity, and the best care possible through the end of this life. Most often it occurs where people live. The bulk of our patients live at home or in some type of communal living environment, whether that's an assisted living facility, a skilled nursing facility, or a group home, for example. But a small number of people require inpatient care, with an average daily census between 250 and 300 if 6 or 12 people are in inpatient care. That's obviously a relatively small percentage, but it's a really important percentage. Next slide, please. So the 4 levels of care that we can provide in hospice are GIP, general inpatient, respite, routine, and continuous care. When somebody comes on hospice and they're living at home or even in a skilled nursing facility or assisted living, their usual level of care is routine care. Routine care can be delivered at home or in assisted living, skilled nursing, as I mentioned, and really is sort of the basic level of care. Respite is specifically for caregiver breakdown, and that is a really important service that we provide on a regular basis to our patients. That can occur in a skilled nursing facility or at a freestanding inpatient facility like we're building. And so we can have the opportunity to give patients and their families a really nice break when they need it, so they can get a little bit of rest. If they need to go out of town for a few days, it's a place where they can know that their families are really well cared for while they have to be gone. Continuous care is a situation generally in a patient's home, possibly in assisted living, where the hospice staff is there with them on a nearly continuous basis. And this does happen. It's can be somewhat rare, but preferably patients who need that much care would be able to come to our inpatient care center for the last level of care, which is general inpatient. General inpatient is the highest level of hospice care. In my mind, it's almost like ICU level hospice care. These are people with symptoms that just cannot be managed in one of these lower levels of care. And they may need frequent dosage adjustments, trials of new medications. We might be switching medications with a potential risk of side effects or withdrawal that we need to manage on the spot. General inpatient can only be delivered in an inpatient setting such as this, or in rare cases in skilled nursing facilities. Next slide, please. And why is this so important? There are hospices, as probably most of you know, that don't have an inpatient facility. How do they provide that care? They either need to send their patients to another hospice that have inpatient care to try to form some contractual relationship with an agency that can provide that level of care, or build their own. And a lot of hospices just simply don't have GIP level of care. We are going to be able to provide this. We do provide it currently, and it's going to allow our team, which is an interdisciplinary group of individuals that include the nurse, the personal caregiver or certified nursing assistant, the social worker, the chaplain, music therapy, and even volunteers, and for all of that team to be there in one place and often at the same time. Very often at our care center now, we do rounds together. Not all 6 or 7 people are in the room at the same time, but it really is beneficial for us to be temporally in contact so that we all are on the same page when we're working with the patient and families. Having our own inpatient center gives us the opportunity to work with specialized medications and routes of administration. For example, we use subcutaneous infusions and injections of medications that really are not used commonly in really any other setting. Our team is quite expert at that. Plus, we have a specialized pharmacy that we work with that can help us be creative when we have a patient maybe who can't swallow or has so much swelling of the extremities that under the skin administration of medications isn't a good idea. What are our other options? And working with our pharmacists closely will allow us to be creative in that way. And having our own facility gives us the ability to put in place our own rules and our own processes. This isn't to say that, we're going to go rogue and do everything different than, the regulations require. We're still going to do everything by the book. But I just wanted to give one example. At our current inpatient center at Mckee, this was about a year and a half ago, so we were well into COVID-19. And probably a lot of you were aware that rules were put in place in different buildings, different facilities that might have been arbitrary. Different hospitals had to come up with their own rules about visitation. And the rule at that moment in time was that, at least at our hospital where our inpatient unit was one family member could visit for 1 hour at the end of the patient's life. So we had to try to know exactly when that patient was going to die, which, as you know, is impossible. And then notify that family member, have them on call to come in for just 1 hour, which in and of itself was relatively arbitrary. We had a young woman in her 40s who was dying of breast cancer, and she had to make a choice who that one person was going to be. And she decided on her mother, who came from several states away, was staying in a hotel nearby in Loveland, waiting for us to call her. And the patient herself was probably still a couple of days away from her final hour. When her 19-year-old daughter shows up at the security desk downstairs in the emergency room at Mckee and says, "I need to see my mother." The security team called up to our unit and said, "You have to decide. You have to decide for this woman whether it's going to be her daughter or her mother who's going to be seeing her in the last hour of her life." And we got together as a team to try to decide this. And we realized that the rule that was put in place was simply arbitrary, that we weren't going to stand for that. We kind of got through this Sophie's Choice type of decision. Both the mother and the daughter of the patient were allowed to see her, but not without a bit of a fight that we had to have with the house supervisor. In any case, having our own facility will make times like that hopefully a thing of the past, that we will be able to, with reason and care and love, help our families be with their loved ones at the time that they need to be there, and not have to be under some arbitrary rules that somebody else is putting on us. So really, really excited about this care center. Please help us continue to make this a reality, and come see it. It's beautiful. It's great to just drive by it and see what's going on. But before too long, we'll be opening and giving tours, so stick with us. Next, I want to introduce you to Tammy Brannan, the director of Pathways' nationally recognized grief and loss program, which helps children, teens, and adults navigate the journey of grief after the loss of a loved one. Welcome, Tammy. Take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, all of us, everybody who's joined us this evening. It's hard to believe it's been a year, and I would venture to say that we all thought and maybe rather hoped we'd be in a bit of a different place than we are this year. I'd like to shift the conversation a bit from our wonderful care center that I have the great privilege of having my office look out upon every day, so I get to see the progress, and to talk about something that we are all going through, which is a pandemic that is not over, is probably not going to have a time in which it's completely over. And I think we can certainly appreciate everything we've all come through to this point and continue to go through. So I want to share a little bit about some of the offerings that we have at Pathways at the Grief and Loss Center to help people who are specifically grieving the loss of somebody in their life. Whether it's been over the past year or at any point in time, our programs and services are available to anybody in the community who's experiencing grief due to loss. And we would really encourage you to go to the website to learn more about our programs, but I'm going to touch upon a few of them that are specific to the holidays. So if I could get the next slide. There are a few in particular that are coming up. Actually, a couple of them this weekend that I want to point out. One of them is on Saturday, and it's a in-person wreath making open house where we'll be spreading out to keep precautions for everybody, but it's an opportunity to come and to create a special memorial wreath that you can take home with you, or you can take and place at a cemetery or special location. And so that's a 10 to 3, and you can register for that and get more details on our website. On Sunday, December 5th, we have a virtual memorial service. And this is in collaboration with one of our affiliate hospices, which is CBNA and Halcyon. And we will be hosting a memorial for people who've, again, had a loss at any point in time, who would like to just have the opportunity to remember and to take a pause, to be with others who also are experiencing grief during this holiday season. So again, on our website is more information and a place to register for that memorial service on Sunday. And then finally, the other holiday offering is Coping Through the Holidays, and that is next week on December 9th. And this is a small gathering of people who are coming to learn a little bit more about maybe some ways in which they can get through the holidays, some coping, some different ideas that our counseling staff will share and encourage people to share with one another. So all of these do require registration, so please visit the website for more details about those. And then next slide, please. Just want to take a moment to talk about the idea of collective grief and healing, and not to downplay, because it is very important, the individual process that we all go through, but there is something greater that I think we're all experiencing, and I think we're all realizing more as time goes on, that there is a collective experience that's happening as a result of COVID and everything else that's happened in our world over the past couple of years. And it's very important that we not only embrace our own personal journeys of grief, but also embrace and acknowledge the collective grief that we are all in the midst of. And one way that we know how to do that, and that is important in the healing process, is through rituals and practices to acknowledge our grief. And I'm going to mention a few of them, and our events are part of that, but there's some really wonderful ideas. This comes from a recent article that I read that's called "This Too Shall Pass," about the mourning collective loss in the age of COVID. And I highly recommend the article, but this was just a little bit of it that I wanted to make sure to share. There's 5 practices that they talk about for grieving well, and these can be explored personally or with a group. And the first one would be writing. Writing a grief letter or a grief list, making an inventory can sometimes be really helpful when we feel overwhelmed. either in a personal writing or in a collective journal. Making a grief altar or memorial corner, creating a special place in a house, in a workplace, a place for photos, a place where we can put special items from people who have passed. This is a way to help us say goodbye. Walking, doing a gratitude walk. Physical movement can unlock things in us that thinking alone cannot. Going for walks alone or with a friend while focusing on things we're thankful for can be a powerful practice for dealing with loss and with all the stress that we each endure every day. Talking, telling stories. When someone we love has died, it helps to listen to and to tell stories about them, just as we do and we did more often in wakes and other rituals as community. We can find often deep comfort in remembering these losses, either again with one another or together as families and communities. And then finally, listening. Music can help you to feel, and it can also help you to heal. Music can open a pathway to our emotions that sometimes words cannot. So we can open ourselves up to grief through listening and even through playing or being involved in music with others. So although grief is a very painful experience, we also have to recognize how important it is to honor it, both individually and collectively, allowing it to really unfold in its own time, rather than holding it in some sort of timetable. Seeking to avoid it really only makes it harder. And I think our ancestors are people that we can maybe look to and look back on before us, because grief is not new. Great tragedies are not new. And grief has gifts to offer us. And it can be very hard to find those when you're in the midst of it. But our ability to grieve well and to discern these gifts is also enormously helpful. We can rely upon our ancestors, and I think it's also really important to remember we are becoming ancestors, and one day how we respond, what we do during this time will be remembered, looked upon, and read about for many, many generations. So our ability to do these things, to pass them down, and to show future generations how you get through something like this is incredibly important. And it is part of our purpose, and perhaps a way of looking more hopefully into the future and what we can do with what we're going through right now. Next slide. And I just wanted to share this saying. One of my favorite people is Brene Brown, and if you don't know of her, I would encourage you to Google her and listen to anything that's out there. She says, an experience of collective pain does not deliver us from grief or sadness. It is a ministry of presence. These moments remind us that we are not alone in our darkness, and that our broken heart is connected to every heart that has known pain since the beginning of time. So please carry this with you. I hope that many of you will participate in some of the events that we have, or call us to learn more about counseling and other support groups. Thank you for joining us this evening, and I believe now we'll have some time for questions and answers.
Thank you, Tammy. That is correct. Now, with the time we have left, I'd like to get some of the questions from our community and our audience. Quick reminder, if you have a question you would like to ask, you can submit your question right under the video player. Just type it in right there. Right under the video player, you can submit your question. So while we wait for a few more audience questions to come in, we have a general question for one of our panelists to answer. And the question is, what is palliative care, and how is it different from hospice care?
Wow.
I'm going to let the good doctor throw in on that
one. Yeah, that's actually a very simple question, but the answer can get complicated. Palliative care at its heart is medical care, holistic care aimed at comfort and lessening suffering. But generally, it's specifically for people who, for whatever reason, aren't ready for hospice just yet. Either they're earlier in their course of illness so that their life expectancy is longer than 6 months, or they're still seeking life prolonging treatment, curative treatment, or treatment that isn't covered under a hospice plan of care. Having said that, as simple as that sounds, palliative care can take place in so many settings, and the way that it's delivered looks different in each setting. So palliative care occurs in hospitals, in acute hospitals, in ICUs. Palliative care occurs in people's homes, which is the way we deliver palliative care at Pathways. Palliative care can occur in a doctor's office or a nurse practitioner's office, and that would be clinic-based or outpatient palliative care. So when somebody uses the grab bag term palliative care, sometimes it confuses families or individuals because it's sometimes a moving target. And in full transparency, the way we've delivered palliative care at Pathways has changed over the time that I've been here. And it might continue to change, although our current model of community-based in-home palliative care is filling a really important niche, a really important need in the community and for our specific patients. So we're really pleased about that. We know we provide a great service both to the patients and their families and to the medical providers of the community who refer to us because it's a really needed service.
Very much, Doctor. Now, our next question is, I have a family member who has Alzheimer's. Does Pathways have expertise with this?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say, I'll share some thoughts, and then Dr. Tobin or Tammy, feel free to jump in. For a number of years, Pathways has partnered with the Alzheimer's Association, both to support the work that they do and also to provide special training for staff and for volunteers. No two people are alike, and no two disease states are alike. And so there are unique needs that patients with Alzheimer's or other related dementias have. And it's important that we stay current and on the cutting edge of that. And proud to say that we have. And forgive me, I'm not going to be giving the most accurate statistics, but I believe the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, which tracks a number of different things, including the percentage of total hospice care by diagnosis. For decades, cancer has been the number one diagnosis. I believe within the next few years, Alzheimer's and related dementias are actually expected to eclipse cancer and become the most common hospice diagnosis. Dr. Tobin, Tammy, I don't know if you have any other insights you want to share.
Only for the last several years, our staff has had additional and expert training in working with people with Alzheimer's, any type of dementia, really. And, we're very proud of that. Also, our medical providers have a great deal of experience working with generally older people who have dementia, though we have had a number of younger people who've had early onset dementia who present extra challenges. but in both our clinical and medical knowledge, but also in our knowledge of approach and how to meet somebody where they're at and their families, help them kind of understand, for instance, that when their loved one is paranoid or angry about something that's occurred, it isn't personal, and sometimes that's hard to remember in the moment. And our staff is really good at helping kind of bring people back into the moment.
I think I would add one other thing, just really quickly, to say that we not only care for Alzheimer's patients in our hospice program, but we also provide care in palliative care. And also in our grief and loss program, our counselors work with patients and families who are caregiving and who may not yet be ready or appropriate for hospice. And so we have a rare opportunity to sometimes provide a continuum of care early on when a diagnosis is new, and then following families all the way through till the end of life.
So as another reminder, you could submit your question for tonight's discussion by typing it right under the video player. So to get your question in, please submit it right under the video player. Next, it looks like we have a few similar questions from different people. I'm going to pick one. I'm new to the conversation on hospice, so I feel my loved one will be headed there soon. What do I need to know about inpatient care versus home care?
I'll take that one. I guess what I would say to a family member of a loved one who is getting close to needing hospice care is ideally, I would say, don't worry about that. I know that maybe sounds glib, and I don't mean to be that way, but it really is part of the work and part of the job of your hospice care team to help you figure out what's the right setting to deliver hospice care for your loved one. If in most cases we start hospice care at home, and if it's getting to the point where for some reason it's too difficult, or the symptoms aren't managed adequately despite all the things that we've tried in our best efforts, will help you figure out when the time is to move to inpatient care. Having said that, it's comforting, I know, to our patients and their families that when they sign up for care with Pathways, they know they have the option of the inpatient care center, both for symptoms out of control, but also for respite. And that's really comforting for them. And we do a good job of it.
Moving on now to another question. What exercises, support, or advice do you have to assist the family and friends, as well as examples of support for the dying individual or individuals, people who are unable to be in the company of loved ones as they are dying?
That is a really profound question. Yeah. Tammy, well, I'll let you run with that.
Yeah, I think what I hear in that question is some of what has impacted us over the past couple of years with COVID, and particularly patients who may be in facilities where it changes from day to day whether or not they can see their family members. And in hospital settings, as Mike alluded to, part of our real desire to have the care center is so that we can, using safety measures, still make it possible for families to see one another, because we do know how important that is and what an impact it has on the grief process when families are not able to be together. And in our work in grief and bereavement, we are seeing a lot more of that, and having to find ways to support people who were not able to be at the bedside or say goodbye in person. And so we have had to lean on technology and using phones and video and other ways for people to feel like they can be in the room and that they can be there to say a final goodbye and to be with them in the best, safest way possible.
Well said, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tammy. And looking at the clock and what we're scheduled for this discussion, and we have no further questions at the moment, I think what I'd like to do is pass the conversation back over to Nate Lampkin to close out this event.
Well, thank you so much. Really special and sincere thank you to Dr. Tobin and to Tammy. It's always a privilege to share the screen with you, and proud to be your colleague. I want to thank everybody for giving us your time and attention this evening. This is a really important, critical juncture for Pathways on the verge of opening this care center and really finding ways to continue to row into the great and growing need, not just for inpatient care, but for all of the services that we provide. We have enjoyed incredibly generous community support for over 40 years, and we continue to need your help in fully living our mission as the community grows and the needs and the challenges become more complex. So just a reminder again, Colorado Gives Day is coming up in just a few days, next Tuesday, December 7th. You do not have to wait until December 7th to give your gift. There's the link at the bottom of the screen. Encourage you to click the link or scan the code and go to our Colorado Gives Day page. You can copy and paste the link right into your browser. And this is at Pathways homepage at www.pathways-care.org. I want to thank our moderator and all the folks on the back end who helped make this production possible. Want to wish everyone a very happy and healthy holidays. Thank you so much for being with us, and have a wonderful evening.